Hello, class. I'm back to talk to you about state legislatures. So this is all contained in Chapter 7 of your textbook, and the material we're going to be specifically covering is on pages 176 through 185. Now, first of all, your legislators who are members of the state legislature. In New York State, there's two houses because it's a bicameral legislature, as it's known, which means two houses. 49 out of the 50 state legislatures are bicameral. Only one state legislature in America is unicameral, as it's known, meaning it has one house. That's Nebraska. All 49 other states are bicameral. So in the case of New York, we have the New York State Assembly, which is the lower house, as it's known, and there are 150 members in the New York State Assembly. In the North Country, your assemblyman, in all likelihood, is Representative Billy Jones, who has been elected twice. He's running for his third term unopposed, so obviously he's pretty popular. And he's our assemblyman. If you're from the district south of there, Dan Steck is the assemblyman. Now, in the New York State Assembly, there's a grand total of 150 assembly people. So, two I just mentioned, Billy Jones and Dan Steck. Now, in the New York State Senate, the upper house, there are 63 state senators in New York State, and our outgoing retiring state senator is Senator Betty Little. And obviously this fall, we have a heated political contest for that open seat. The gentleman I previously mentioned, Representative Steck from the district south of us, is running against Clinton County Treasurer Kimberly Davis. So we're going to have a new state senator after this election, and who knows which one it'll be. I haven't seen any polls. I don't know how close the election is. Time will tell. So that's how the New York State legislature is made up. Every state's different. You have charts in your book that show you this in those pages that I told you about. So what we want to talk about is, what's the job entail? What do these people do? And there's three basic things that all state legislators do. They enact laws. And we'll talk about that in more detail. They represent us. Billy Jones and Betty Little are our representatives in Albany for the North Country. And they have oversight of state agencies. That's the three basic functions. So let's talk about those and expand on those. Now, first of all, and the most important, and it just kind of makes sense when you think about it, when you think about a state legislator, what do you think they do? Well, of course, they pass legislation. And legislators, it varies year to year, the volume of legislation that's going to be passed in any specific state. And as I mentioned before in the governor's election, a lot of it is pushed forward by the governor's office. But some of it starts right in the legislature, absent the governor pushing it in the first place. I'll give you one example of legislation that our representative, Billy Jones, sponsored, wrote, came up with, and it was recently passed. That's a bill concerning road salt contamination. Billy Jones was made aware of how, especially on state roads where they use a tremendous amount of salt compared to the town roads where they're going to use more sand than salt, the salt runoff from state highways was ruining people's water sources. It was fouling the aquifers and unfortunately turning some people's wells into saltwater wells. So Representative Jones wrote legislation to deal with this, to start scaling back on the amount of salt used here in the state of New York, and that bill just recently passed. Now, with all bills in the state of New York, you can obviously look them up on the New York State Assembly site or the New York Senate site, which I gave you links to in the class, in the Moodle, obviously. So, enacting laws is a major part of what members of the state legislatures do. Write the laws, debate them, pass them, serve on various committees, subcommittees, and so forth. And also responding to legislation that the governor puts forth in the state of the state and then banners around the state trying to get approval. Another part of legislation that state legislators are involved in is approval of state constitutional amendments. And we talked about that previously when we talked about state constitutions, but also state legislators are involved in the approval of amendments to the United States Constitution. Any proposed amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which is passed with the two-thirds majority in both the U.S. House and U.S. Senate, the next step is to go to the state legislatures, where it requires 3/4 of all the state legislatures to pass that proposed U.S. constitutional amendment before it becomes part of the Constitution. This doesn't happen very often, but boy, when it does, it's an extremely important responsibility that state legislators hold. Now, another part of the legislative process, and one that keeps taking up more and more time, is passage of budgets, which the governor will propose in the state of New York around mid-January, and then it must be passed by April 1st in New York State. If it's not, it's considered a late budget, and certain things go into effect, and they have to pass continuing resolutions. And another thing that a lot of people might not realize is, if they have a late budget, the state legislature and their staffs do not get paid. They withhold their paychecks until they ultimately pass a state budget. So that's an incentive, obviously, to get the thing passed on time, unless you want to do without your, bi-monthly paychecks as a state representative or any other staff members. So, passing budgets, because they're so complex and large, and especially in these trying times, if the federal government doesn't help out with more aid to the states and localities, this next budget season from January to April is going to be a nightmare. Even if they do provide assistance, it's going to be tricky business trying to figure out what are the revenues really going to be? How fast are we going to recover from this? If we get a vaccine, when will it really take effect and be safe for everybody to be back to business as normal, so to speak? So some pretty trying times for the state legislature coming up in this next year, and the governor's office. Now, another thing that members of the state legislature do, obviously, is represent us. We're in a representative democracy. We send them to Albany to be our direct representatives in Albany, pass laws on our behalf, but also solve problems. One prime example would be the bill that I talked about, Representative Jones getting passed with road salt. So there are representatives, and part of this being a representative is constituent services. We are all their constituents. So I live in Clinton County. I'm a constituent of both Representative or Assemblyman Jones and Senator Little. So, if I'm having some sort of problem with a state agency or whatnot, I'm going to contact my representatives for assistance in that. Now, one prime example of this happening that just happened not too long ago, excuse me, that I know for a fact that Assemblyman Jones's phone rang off the hook for, was New Yorkers struggling to get unemployment. In the beginning of the pandemic, the state website was just overwhelmed with volume, and they weren't prepared for it, and nothing like that had ever happened before in those, tremendous numbers. And a lot of people were having difficulty getting their applications in or getting answers after that. And who do they call? They call Billy Jones's office or Senator Little's office to try to get some help from the staff members there. And I know the staff members in both offices were very helpful to New Yorkers struggling to cut through the red tape and get their unemployment. So that's one example of a constituent service. Another one might be, you filled out all your TAP applications and the state lost them, and now you got to refill them all out and you need the money fast and so forth. Call Billy Jones's office or Senator Little's office and say, what the hell's going on here? What's state ed doing losing my paperwork? They'll help you out and try to cut through the red tape. So it's those sort of things that are constituent services where our representatives try to help us deal with the bureaucracy in the state of New York. Now, finally, the last thing that, by the way, constituent services, the term for that, and you'll see that in your textbook, it's known as casework. And one other comment on that. Casework, successful casework in constituent services is something that either a senator or assembly person's office is good at, or maybe they sort of lag behind and don't do a very good job. I know for a fact that Assemblyman Jones's office does a fine job with casework, and if they are successful in solving problems for their constituents, it's a great thing for everybody. The person involved, let's use the unemployment check problem. You had a problem with the website. You never could get your application in. This happened, that happened. You've been waiting for weeks for unemployment. You need the money now. And Assemblyman Jones's office helps you cut through the red tape, get your application in, and get those checks deposited in your account. If they help you when, you've been trying and trying, dealing with the Department of Labor and all these other people, and they never have any answers for you, and all of a sudden, Assemblyman Jones's office cuts through the red tape, and before you know it, in a matter of days, you got your check, you're going to really appreciate that, obviously. And chances are, you're going to tell your friends, hey, having a problem getting your unemployment? Call Billy Jones's office. They'll help you. They're really good at it. They did it for me. That is something that an assembly person or a senator couldn't buy with advertisement dollars. That's person-to-person recommendations or endorsement among friends. That sort of thing you can't buy. And it has a lasting effect because when you go to the voting booth and you're trying to figure out who you're going to vote for, the name that sticks out with positive reinforcement is going to be the one you vote for. So if you're looking at that ballot and you remember your friend telling you what a great help Senator Little or Assemblyman Jones was in helping them get their unemployment or their TAP check or whatever, you're going to say, aha, that's a good person. I'm voting for them. Might be the only thing you know about them, really. But if it's positive like that, with word-of-mouth endorsement, You cannot beat that. You can't buy that with a TV ad, believe me. So, very important work for everybody. We benefit from it. So do the offices of the elected officials. So finally, there's the whole process of state oversight or overseeing state agencies. From time to time, every committee in the New York State Assembly and Senate will have oversight hearings of the agencies that they oversee. And basically what this involves is, all the different agencies like Department of Ed, the DEC, you name it, have tremendous funding in the New York State budget passed by the legislature. So from time to time, the officials from those agencies have to appear in hearings and justify what they're doing with the money. So are they really getting the bang for the buck, so to speak? What have you accomplished with this billions of dollars we gave you to spend over the last few years? What's the future hold? And are you going to need more money? If so, why? So, state oversight's a very important role. It keeps these agencies in line. Not only do they answer to the governor that appoints all their top officials, they answer to the Senate and the Assembly too, who basically pay the bills for them. So, very important role that they play to make sure things in the state are functioning properly. So, that's what I've got to tell you about state legislatures. I'll be coming up with some more lectures for you in the future as we move forward in the text. But as we approach midterm, this gets us all caught up with the material that'll be on the midterm. So, everybody take care of themselves. Be safe. Wear your masks. Talk to you soon.